Welcome to the On the Blue Line podcast. I am your host, Wayne Mulder, and this is the interview room. And we are into season 2 here in January of 2020. I thank you so much for listening, and this is the first one to kick off this year. I think you're going to enjoy this one. I get to sit down with Vanessa Kennedy with Code One Wellness. And Code One Wellness, well, she's going to introduce you to the company, but I love what they're doing. You're going to hear her passion for reaching out and helping law enforcement officers when it comes to the area of mental health. You know, they say their tagline is "We protect those that protect others," and how their entire mission is about making the first responder whole again. When I learned about it, when I went to their website, I looked at the facility that she's trying to build, and I heard her passion for trying to help law enforcement officers. I knew that I wanted to bring this message to you guys and give you a chance to hear it from her. And then after the show, I would just ask that you go to the show notes. Be sure to check out Code One Wellness. There's links in there and see what they're doing to help law enforcement officers across this country and what their vision is for helping them in the future. Thank you so much for listening. The interview room starts now.
On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for their actions. I will always uphold the Constitution, the community, and the agency I serve.
Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad we were finally able to connect. I know we've been trying to make this show happen for a while, but I've been following what you guys have been doing with Code One Wellness, and I think this is such an important message to get out to my listeners.
Right, absolutely, yes. And I can't stress to you enough, this is like probably an extremely hot topic, unfortunately, with many of us.
Absolutely it is. Maybe we can just start with just telling the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have been in law enforcement for about 11 years now. I'm reserve now, but I stopped doing full time about 2 years ago. I actually kind of went through some stuff myself at my former police department, and I kind of just decided that my long-term goal is basically to help other first responders because of what I kind of went through myself and really realized, what in the world was going on. So, I just took hold of that and I'm like, I think I'm going to go down that road. And so I've kind of just been really dealing with a lot of mental health with first responders since then, where it kind of all began with me, actually, when I became an officer. Graduated early in high school. I caught on to, my dad actually was in the military. He was Marine Corps. So living that military lifestyle, I guess that had a lot to do with it, but my dad wouldn't let me go to the military. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? Well, I kind of followed the traces of what my grandmother did. She was an RN. So when I jumped into the medical field, then I'm like, well, I'll do nursing. Well, nursing really wasn't my thing. I really wanted to be out there in the action and really be out in the street. So then I ended up getting into EMS and took the EMT paramedic stuff. And then I was just like, man, this is really great. And I was out there for a couple of years doing my thing. And then I'm like, I started seeing what the police officers were doing, on the wrecks and everything else. And I'm like, I really want to do that. And so I did. That's kind of how I jumped into law enforcement and realized that my attitude and my personality really felt more comfortable when I got into the law enforcement field. And then, man, that was a huge accomplishment for me. So I just took off running with it. And I guess I would say about my 8th or 9th year into law enforcement is when the whole CIT thing started coming out really heavy. And then when I took that CIT class, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is so me. And then I found my niche, because you know how cops are, man. We find our niches and we're like, either we're drug cops or we're, DUI cops or whatever the case may be. So after really being good at, being a drug cop, basically I jumped into CIT and I'm like, man, this mental health thing is for me. So I just went for it and did it. And then one thing led to another. And I started seeing all the issues behind the scenes, and I started picking up what was happening inside the departments themselves. And I'm like, man, we got to do something. I started doing my research, and one thing led to another. And I'm like, here I am today, just, working with Code One and doing my thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you are so correct that officers do tend to gravitate, and it's a misunderstanding with the general public. I think often the general public seems to think like all cops are traffic cops, or all cops are, because if you run into someone at a store, they're going to be like, oh, don't write me a ticket, or I'm not the guy you're looking for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
They all think that's what we do, but you're right.
Right,
We all
right.
kind of find our niche, what we prefer, based a
Yes.
lot on personalities.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree.
So
That's
just
what we're good at.
yes, and it varies for everyone. Like I love, which is very rare, I'm finding, I love economic crimes. So I spent a lot of time in there doing those type cases.
Okay.
And it is funny when I go and talk both at the academy level and to others, it's difficult to make people understand why I love it, but it does. It speaks
Yeah,
to personality and what people enjoy.
absolutely. I agree. Awesome.
So let me ask you just a couple get to know you questions, maybe a little bit silly, but I ask every guest that comes on here.
Okay.
Do you prefer coffee or tea?
Man, I'm a coffee drinker all the way. I'm kind of like, let's make a pot of coffee, sit at the table, and well, just shoot the shit, I guess.
Nothing wrong with that. And I find that's pretty common with law enforcement officers.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your favorite place to have that cup of coffee?
I would probably say just somebody's house sitting around the kitchen table. You know, I won't get into the controversy of what we've been dealing with as officers, especially when it comes to, you know, your well-known coffee facilities out there. So yeah, let's just stick with the kitchen table at somebody's house. I'm good with that.
That works. Lastly, what's the place that brings you the most peace or your favorite place to just stop, breathe, and enjoy life?
That has been something I probably had to stop and take a moment to think about because of such being in such a heightened awareness state all the time. In coming home, for me personally, I would probably say my own home because I can let my guard down in my own home. And I've got several dogs. I mean, I've got about 5 dogs. So yeah, I know people think I'm crazy. I'm the crazy dog lady, but no. My dogs bring me the most peace. Because I don't know, they keep me calm. I mean, I don't know if you want to call them my emotional support dogs or whatever, but it would be my home, my surroundings, and my dogs. Really, that's my go-to quiet. I mean, they might not be quiet. I shouldn't say that, but that's my serene serenity place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find, just curiosity question based on that answer, do you find, as we segue into mental health and so forth, that with law enforcement officers, they often answer those questions that way, where they kind of prefer to be by themselves, or because we deal with the public so often and we're out there in this crazy space that we prefer to be alone?
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to say it's difficult. You know, there's concerts that I'd like to go to, and I can't. I'm speaking for myself, and there may be other officers that probably feel the same way I do. However, I've asked this question to other cops too. I mean, my buddies and stuff I'm friends with, they kind of are the same way. I mean, we get to this point of you work, you know, of course we work 12, you know, I was full time. So you're 2 on, 2 off every other weekend. And it's just like, man, when you get an opportunity just to have a day off and you're like, hey, I'd like to go to this concert and check it out. Or, you know, maybe I just want to go to a restaurant and, you know, and sit down and enjoy a meal with my family. It's getting to the point to where it's so uncomfortable because with the shootings that we're having, so many, you know, the active shooter stuff, and people just randomly shooting people everywhere. I mean, it's just to the point to where why even bother going out? Why even bother going and doing anything? I mean, I really just probably would rather sit at home and, I don't know, watch live PD, I guess.
I find that to be a very common answer.
Right, and I'm pretty sure most older folks in law enforcement would be like, man, I'm rookie still watching this live PD and cops and everything else, man. Once you're in the game, I mean, you live it, you breathe it. It's your life. It's everything you are. It's who you are. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's just what it is, period.
Yeah. Well, I will say I was never a huge fan of cops, just total disclosure here.
I know, right?
But I do kind of like
not to watch.
I do kind of like live PD though, because it does seem to have a more accurate portrayal of what we go through. Obviously, it's still all about ratings and it's still all about trying to push something out to the public.
Right.
But I think the public gets a more realistic view with shows like Live PD.
Yeah.
Than with the way Cops was often portrayed.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that one for sure. Yeah, I like it a lot better.
Let me ask, so you talked a little bit about what you did prior to law enforcement, but What kind of drew you to being a nurse and to going the EMT route originally?
Okay, so let's just steer from this whole, why do you want to be a cop? This universal of, oh, I want to help people, right?
Yes.
Look, I want to help people, okay? But I think it was the way I was raised, honestly, because I don't consider myself to be more of your girly girl type of personality. I'm more of your quote unquote tomboy kind of personality. I mean, I get along more with the males. I hang out with. I guess maybe it was the relationship I had with my dad. I'm definitely not one of them chicks. I got daddy issues. That's definitely not me. But I guess it was just I was more intrigued and challenged with some of the ways that he actually, I guess, lived his life. I mean, it was a straight and narrow. I mean, you get up, you do what you need to do. He was very, very neat and clean. I mean, everything had to be precise. There was a way to do things, and I just followed that regimen. As a matter of fact, I think I took a hold of it so well because I'm actually dyslexic. I've had dyslexia. Well, I mean, they tested me when I was in school and I was younger. So I've always had to have a different way of learning, and I've had to keep myself organized. So I think with that way of life and how my dad did things and being so straight and narrow, my mother basically was, she kept the house clean and the laundry and everything else. The beds were made. But when it came to my dad's, the way he wanted things done, I mean, it was a scheduled thing. I mean, he just had to have things clean and put away certain neat and clean, certain way, whatever. And I picked up on that. And I guess it just fit for me. I picked up on it, and then I'm like, I got into the nursing thing, and I'm like, gosh, don't get me wrong, nurses are wonderful. And I, by all means, thank you for what you guys do. I mean, that's awesome. It just did not fit my personality. It just, I was very straight to the point. Let's go in, get this done. If there is a threat, let's take it out, period, point blank. I'm done. On to the next. Boom, 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 boom. So, yeah.
And I think that personality traits that you're describing,
yeah.
maybe from an organizational standpoint, maybe not to the level of Marines, because they're very well known for.
Yes.
Yes. And Coast Guard, too. I work with a gentleman who's retired from the Coast Guard, and I will say also very structured. Mm-hmm. And though law enforcement may not be quite to that degree across the board, it definitely brings in those personalities, that type A personality that wants structure and wants organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and don't think I didn't get my butt beat, because I absolutely did. I was raised on a very strict regiment where, you talk back, you get smacked. I mean, you respect your parents, plain and simple. So I didn't have a choice. But I'm thankful for the way I was raised. Very thankful, because I don't think I would be doing what I am today or be where I'm at if I was not. So.
Yes. And I think that plays an important part, especially as we get older and we come to law enforcement.
Responsibility, respect, everything.
Exactly. And I know for me personally, in fact, I wasn't one of these stories where I'd always dreamed about being a cop. As I started looking into going into law enforcement, I realized that a lot of the things that I loved and a lot of my upbringing had fed perfectly into the law enforcement career. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah. Matter of fact, my dad passed away in 2008 from a heart attack. And looking back now, I remember, I think it was a year before he had passed, I had actually looked into being in law enforcement. And he actually was like, no, you don't want to do that either. Just stick with what you want to do as far as being in the medical field, whatever. And of course, after he passed, I'm like, no, I'm going. And I went, and I'm pretty sure today he would be extremely proud of me. Absolutely. I mean, just without a doubt. So
I'm sure he is.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I kind of mentioned it beforehand, but I had received an email from a young lady who's currently at a university, and she's considering a career in law enforcement. And she was concerned because she says there's a couple stereotypes out there, things that people bring up. And one of them that she mentioned is that law enforcement, in her words, is primarily a masculine job. Obviously, I feel otherwise, but how would you respond to that, being a female in law enforcement?
Okay, well, I think I'm going to address the elephant in the room here, because let's just keep it real and let's just be honest about this. It is not easy being a female in law enforcement, period. Do males make it easy for us? Absolutely not. They just don't. We have to prove ourselves 10 times more than what a male would, basically, because the trust, is she strong enough? Can she handle this? Is she mentally capable of taking somebody out? Is she going to be there for my backup? I mean, it's just there's so many different circumstances involved with being a female in law enforcement. I have to say this. In my 11 years, I will say that they did not prepare us in the academy as females. They did not. I think some people would say, well, you don't need to be prepared. I mean, it's the job. You need to focus on doing your job. Well, there's a lot more that comes with this job than just serving your community. There's so much more behind it. So when I say that, I look back now and I think, man, I really wish someone would have pulled me aside in the academy and said, hey, look, all the females need to come in here. We need to talk. And you need to prepare yourself for where you're going as a female. I mean, not to scare you, but to educate us on, if this happens, you're going to face these things. I mean, here we are getting into this, Me Too movement with, females stepping forward of the sexual harassment and everything else. I mean, have I experienced it? Absolutely, yes. Without a doubt, to no extent, yes, I have. Do I look past it and ignore it? I had to for so long, because if you don't step up and hold your own, then you will never make it in this career. You just will not, period. I think a lot of females, people on the outside, I've gotten this one too. Do you date other females? Do you like other females? Are you bisexual? Things like that. And it's like, no, I'm not one of those females. I mean, I date men. So that's something else that has hit with females. I mean, a lot of people think that just because you're in law enforcement and you work with nothing but males, that, oh, well, you must hate males and you want to be with females. It's some kind of, I don't understand that. I never did. But, with that being said, it's very difficult in dealing with even ranks when you try to apply for a ranking position. I don't know of a lot of female chiefs. I've been seeing some as far as bigger departments.
Yes.
There's a huge difference here when it comes to big departments and small departments, because, wow, that's a whole nother conversation. But with being a female, yes, I will say from experience, and I cannot talk for other people, just myself, from experience, dealing with your smaller departments as a female is it has been very difficult for myself. Now, as far as bigger departments, I'm really not so sure of. I've never worked for a very large metropolitan police department. Mine have been your smaller communities. So I would say the opportunities to move up in rank and whatnot, that's a little difficult. It was for me, to say the least. I know a lot of departments would argue with the fact of, our process is fair and the testing and this and that. Well, I would say that, yeah, there is a major discrepancy in that. I think also, there have been studies done, actually, as a matter of fact. I think there's articles out there that state that when you put females even into a verbal call, like domestic violence calls or whatnot, we are very good at the verbal judo. I mean, as far as females talking other individuals down, yes. I mean, there have been studies done to where it shows there have been so many more male officers who would really fire up a situation, and then a female comes in, a female officer, and really brings that down.
Absolutely. And in use of forces in general, there's been several studies that have shown that females have a much better chance of it not resulting in a use of force.
I think a lot of people, again, look at it across the board. You signed up for this job. This is something that you just need to do and suck it up like the rest of us. Or, you can't cry and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to cry. I'm going to get my feelings hurt. I'm a female. I mean, I'm a human being regardless.
Right.
It's going to happen, like I do what I can do. I do my best as a human being and as a person.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I think that is a valid point that a lot of people miss, is that it's a human job on both sides. We have the humanity of the law enforcement officer that often can be forgotten by administration and the public and so forth, right, as well as the human side of the people we deal with.
So to answer her question, though, is just with all these female issues that we're having today, it's unfortunately too many females are going unnoticed or overlooked. I think there's too many underlying issues when it comes to the harassment side of things. When I went through some issues with the situation I was involved in, after that, I started all of a sudden, I had no idea all these other females were coming forward, and they were like, me too, it happened to me. And I was shocked because I'm like, man, there's a whole nother world of female officers out here that, started talking to me, and they're like, it's okay because I went through the same thing and this is what happened to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was shocked because when I was in, and when I say when I was in the game, when I was full time, I didn't really take a second and stop and really look or pay attention to really other female officers around me. Because I worked with nothing. I mean, I think I worked with, oh gosh, I can't even tell you how many males. I was the only female out that was active on my department out in the streets. Yeah. So, that's all I worked with were, nothing but males, and me being the only female out there on the street, I was like, I really didn't have any other females to actually talk with or lean on. And, I've always been one to work, with other people, closely, and a lot of other female cops. I'm not really quite sure what the deal is, but I don't know if it's a female thing, but when you get them all in the room, sometimes it's just like, man, there's a lot of, estrogen going on there. It's just like, holy moly. So yeah, we try to, again, here we are proving ourselves to the males, and then we get all together and we're just like, and we're proving ourselves to other females. I mean, it's just like, it's a whole nother world out there. And you honestly, I can't even begin to tell you how shocked I was when I found out there were so many others out there that I didn't even know about, and it was kept quiet. And I'm like, man, I'm tired of being quiet about it, really. Of course, I get the backlash of that too, of not staying quiet. So,
well, it seems like, yeah, here we are. And people will always have an opinion on anything, and that doesn't make their opinion correct. So
absolutely. I know. And of course, everybody's like, yeah, I've heard it. I have been called every name in the book, and you just, yeah, so.
But you are correct. I do just want to quickly point out before we switch gears on the topic, but you are absolutely correct. I do think there's a substantial difference because as the listeners know, I'm in the Florida area. So there's all sorts of departments of all different sizes around where we're at.
Right.
And it is different at some of your larger departments. Now, I can't obviously speak for what the female officers are going through, but I can speak to say that there are at captain levels and admin levels, a lot of females, even in this general area, who are doing a superb job, even female chief of police that's in a nearby large city. She's not the chief of police anymore. It's now a male, but she had been up until she retired.
Right.
So that being said, and then also I will say that some of the females that I've had the privilege of working with on my squad have been some of the best deputies that I've worked with. And I think it's kind of like what we talked about. They help balance out the squad as a whole. And that's such an important thing.
Absolutely. Because I remember one incident, as a matter of fact, I had a sergeant that was just really, really irate, with the individual we were on this call with. And it's just like, I really had to, get yelled at later on. I didn't care, but I had to step in and was like, hey, we calm down. It's just, you don't need to, no need to really yell and scream and really get that irate. So yes, you're right. It really does give a very good balance.
Well, let me switch gears just a little bit onto a kind of the topic that brought us together. When it comes to what first responders are out there facing and so forth, Was there a moment for you that changed it and kind of made this the mission that became what you do now with Code One Wellness, which we'll get more into?
Yeah, actually, a matter of fact, I have, I can share this. I can share this story with you, but when this, and I will call it the situation that happened with me in my last department where I stopped doing full time. When that happened and I came home, I felt completely and utterly empty. Like everything had been taken away from me. I wasn't for sure what I was going to do for a job. I wasn't for sure if, another department was going to hire me or what they were going to think of me. I thought it was all my fault. I thought that, I didn't train hard enough. I didn't do enough. So when I got to this point of sitting at home by myself, of course, I didn't have family here. I'm not married. I don't have children. So, well, my dogs, but I was sitting here and there was a moment that I realized that, wow, like this is all I've done for the past 11 years. Like what do I do now? Do I continue in law enforcement? Like what happens to me after this? And so with that being said, there was several times I contemplated on the fact of putting my gun in my mouth. And I'm like, there's nothing left for me. What more can I do? I didn't realize, obviously now, I do now, but at that time I thought, how am I going to go out here and get a normal, and when I mean normal job, I'm thinking, some 9-to-5 desk job, and how is that going to work with me? Like my attitude and the way I work with the community and other people and my authority and my personality and, everything I had, created about myself and developed, there's no way that I was going to be able to go sit at some desk, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And I thought about just completely ending it. And I'm like, well, at least I could call it quits and my career's done and my family wouldn't have to worry about, picking up the bills or, yeah, I have all my stuff, but it got to the point to where I'm like, okay, well, everything will be fine if I'm just not here, period. That just everything will be good. That nobody will have to worry about what the hell I'm going to do or where I'm going to go or what's going to happen to me. And not only that, what I went through, it'll just be forgotten about because that's just what happens. You just poof, you're gone. I'm good. Don't need to be here. So that's when I got to my lowest point and I was sleeping all the time. I didn't drink. I never have been a drinker really, but I was sleeping all the time. I have a comfort thing. Sometimes I eat food. My food's kind of a comfort thing for me sometimes. Wasn't going anywhere, well, because I didn't have any money to go anywhere. So a buddy of mine, Tim, who actually is one of my best friends, was my former partner. And he actually he's very strong Christian. And I was raised Catholic. And I'll tell you, there was a book that he told me to get, and I turned around and I ordered it, and it was by Joyce Meyer. It was called The Battlefield of the Mind. And I started getting back on a routine, and I guess I got tired of feeling sorry for myself. I got tired of sitting there and doing nothing and going nowhere. And I thought, this is complete and utter BS. I can't do this. And then I started getting angry because you go through these stages. Right. And I started getting really angry and I'm like, no, this is not, they're not going to do this to me. I'm not going to go out like this. I'm just not. And I was pissed off. And then I kept, I talked about it with friends and family. And I'm like, they just kept building me up. And I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. And for the longest time, I thought I did, but I didn't. I didn't do anything wrong. And then the next thing I realized, I'm like, I can get through this. So I sat down and I started, while I was looking for a job, I sat there and was going through the Battlefield of the Mind, and I was studying this book and I was reading it, and I was doing audiobook because God knows I hate reading, fall asleep. But I was reading or listening to this audio book, and I'm sitting there highlighting stuff, and I'm like, I got into routine to where I would get up in the morning, I went to go run, and I thought back to myself, you know what got me back on like track? Well, when I was in the academy, when I was in the academy, I was there all day long, Monday through Friday. I had a schedule. They gave us, again, right back to where the same thing when I was born, like how I was raised. I went back to that strict, line of, your routine. There you go. It was a routine for me, and I needed to get back into a solid routine. So I woke up in the morning, I went and ran, I came back, I did my push-ups, my sit-ups, and then I had breakfast, and then I sat there and I studied my book, and I was like, that's just what I did, and I started building more confidence within myself. And then all of a sudden, it dawned on me, like I call it my Oprah Winfrey light bulb moment is what I call it. But I just started thinking, man, I wish there was a place that I could just get in my car and go to where there were other law enforcement people or first responders that would be there for me to listen to me, maybe like a group or something, or, I don't know, help me with some therapy maybe, or, help me maybe find a job or talk me through what was kind of going on and which direction to go and how to handle it. And then that's when it hit me. I was like, there is nothing. There is nowhere to go. I really, there was nothing strictly for a law enforcement officer to go to, or former, obviously at that particular time, a former law enforcement like myself to go to. And then that's when I'm like, something needs to be done. Like I've got to develop this. I have to come up with something. So I did. All I did was sat down at the computer. I started Googling stuff. One thing led to another. I started making phone calls, asking questions. I got my 501c3 done that went really quick, actually. I filled all the paperwork out, and then I picked up a job. I finally got a part-time cop job, reserve position. I've had it ever since. And then I started working full-time, doing the whole Monday through Friday thing. It was a struggle. It was definitely a struggle at first. But the more and more I kept really sinking myself into my passion of wanting to help other officers in the position that I was, because I was hearing about it so much. Because once you get placed in that situation and then you start hearing about it, like other ones going through it, because you don't hear it when you're out there working and you're with your buddies and everything's good, and you're like number one on your sergeant's list because you're the shit and you're out there making all these arrests. You don't hear about the bad stuff then because you're like the golden child. But when shit hits the fan and you're no longer the golden child and now you're on the outs and you're like, nobody likes me anymore, everybody completely blackballed me and they all think it's I did something wrong, you ain't got nowhere to go. I mean, let's be honest, even other law enforcement officers were skeptical because they're like, whoa, what happened? Why aren't you a cop anymore? And then we start thinking, man, I don't know. I don't want to talk to you because I don't know if you did something wrong. I don't want to be affiliated with that. I don't want to look bad because of what you might have done or whatever. So I went through all of that. I literally, people were turning their backs on me, everything. I had nowhere to go. So I thought to myself, you know what? No, this isn't going to happen. So that's when I created Code One, and I'm like, I'm taking this thing all the way because you know what? I guess it was one of those, I'm going to show your ass. I'm going to show you because I'm going to create this because I'm not the only one. What's wrong is wrong and what's right is right. And I wanted to keep being and upholding that integrity that I had and that oath that I took from the very beginning. And I just kept going with it, and I'm not going to stop with it, period.
You highlighted one other thing, though, when you were talking about that, the reading, but then also the importance of relationship. And I just want to point that out, too, because you talked about having that good friend, Tim, that you had spoken to. How important is that when someone's in a moment of crisis, having that relationship or someone they can reach out to?
We always have, man, any cop's got, you got another buddy. We all got buddies. I'm sure you do too. You got that buddy on the department. It's like I call it my ride or die, whatever, because when you're partners, we were partners. I mean, we rode in the car together, and that was, we've all been there. And well, some of us at smaller departments may not have partners, but there is another officer or, person that you have connected with, that you have that knows let's just be honest. They know your shit schedule. They know when you eat. They know when you walk the dog. They know that stuff. So yeah, it was Tim, the one that I called, because he's been there. He's former military. So same thing with him. He just really knew, hey, it's going to be okay. Try this, try that. He just listened. He was just there. He gave me his opinions and stuff. But again, it was still my responsibility to bring myself up out of it. And he just was there to listen. That's all I needed. And that's all I needed. I just needed him to listen. And he gave me some ideas and some examples of stuff, what to do, whatever. And now today he's actually one of my advisors on my nonprofit. So
that's wonderful. So let me ask, tell us about Code One Wellness. What is that all about?
When I started it, I thought, okay, well, what's the whole mission going to be behind this? And I thought to myself, man, well, what are we doing here? Well, we are protecting those who protect others. That is our mission. Period. Point blank. Simple as that. We are here to protect those who protect others. And so when I took that mission statement, I thought, well, at first, I'm thinking, I'm going to go out there and build this massive, huge facility, and this is going to be great, until we found out that it's going to cost millions of dollars. And I thought, well, where am I going to get all this money at, right? Well, and it's not that it's not that easy. It's not. So it's a struggle. It has been a struggle since day one. One thing led to another, and I thought, well, I am an instructor. I can teach courses in law enforcement. I did get that certification and go to school for it. So I started developing what's called mental health education classes. It's just simple, basic stuff. I don't have my list in front of me, but there's a list of classes that we had put together. And when I say we, our director of therapy services, Mary Catherine, she actually sat down with me and then started helping me put some of the stuff together with her expertise, as a therapist, and then with my expertise as being, a law enforcement instructor. We just started putting some mental health classes together and some of the basic stuff. And I thought, well, we hit some highlighted topic stuff. And I started going out there, and I'm like going to some of these departments, some of the guys that I know, and I'm like, hey, I can teach this stuff, da 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 da. And of course, some of the departments are hitting financial problems. They don't have money to pay for the training and all that. And that kind of slowed down after the fact. I developed all these courses. It really wasn't going where I wanted it to go at a faster pace. So I kind of had to slow it down a little bit and offer some kind of free classes here and there. And then, of course, everybody liked it. We did a few classes. Everybody's like, wow, this is really great. Of course, the hottest topic was the relationship, because we all got relationship issues. Let's just be honest here. But yeah, so then I thought, man, what else can I do? And then, of course, Mary Catherine, being our therapist, she's like, well, let's just start doing some, therapy, online therapy stuff. Well, there's a gentleman that I met here in Kansas City that actually does some online therapy stuff. And he goes, wow, it's like the latest thing on the East and West, or no, I take that back, East Coast. A lot of it's down over there, I think, in North Carolina, Florida area, that they do a lot of that stuff. Organizations doing telehealth. There you go. That's what it is.
Yes.
Telehealth. Yes. Telehealth is really big on the East Coast.
In fact, we have it at our agency that we can use the teledoc.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So a lot of therapists here in Kansas City have been moving towards the telehealth in their offices. So we developed the online counseling. Next thing I know, I'm like, let's start developing some chaplain services. And we're thinking, how's that going to work? Because being an online service, or being an online nonprofit, we basically can actually handle anybody and everybody in the entire United States area. And we discovered that as well, and which is great. So it's been an ongoing growth, I guess, per se, when it comes to these programs. The one that we're really focused on right now, because we've got so many people signing up, is the online counseling. That right there is really starting to take off. We're on the right path. We're obviously doing something right. But with that being said, the therapy services and talking about first responders saying, well, you don't understand me, or you don't understand the job, or how is this therapist going to help me, or blah, 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 whatever. I thought the same damn thing when I was a cop too, and I'm like, you just don't get it. You don't get us. Okay, well, let me explain something to you. The one therapist that we do have, she actually has been in this for 16 years. She has had a background working with law enforcement and veterans for that long. She does a lot of alcohol and drug therapy stuff too. However, we ran across, just not with her 16 years and dealing with first responders as well and veterans, we actually ran across an organization. It's called Academy Hour, and you and I were discussing this earlier.
Yeah.
But this is something that within the state of Missouri and then also the state of Kansas, they don't have this. And I know that because, well, Academy Hour will actually show you where this training has been done and who has it and who does not have it. But this is a specialized training, and it's called a Certified First Responder Counselor. It's I forget how long the training is. We just partnered with them, but every single person in our entire organization will be going through this training, including the therapist. So yes, they regardless, even though Mary Catherine's got the experience in the background, with the other therapists coming forward and wanting to do and work with first responders, because it seems to be a specialized, quote unquote, specialized field now that some people are interested in.
Yeah.
It gives you this specialized training, and that way you can focus on how to deal with a first responder and then understand and relate to what they are talking about with the trauma and everything else. So, yeah. So Code 1 completely is a mind, body, and spirit. It is all in one is what this is. That is the whole reason behind what it is that we're doing, because of course some of your places are just mental health, but mental health is just not about the mind and fixing the mind. If you don't fix the mind, you have to follow with your nutrition, the way you eat, your spiritual side. But if you're not a spiritual person, that's okay. I mean, it's, whatever floats your boat, but it's kind of like, you can't just do one and not fix the others. This is
Absolutely.
a whole. You are a whole as a person. So that's what Code 1 provides. We provide not only the mental health, but we provide the nutritional. And then we also will provide the spiritual. So when I really sat down, as a matter of fact, Dr. Johnson, but he's one of our new directors. He's not fully come on just yet, but I've done a lot of research on him. And he's very, very involved. He's a chiropractic physician, but he's very, very involved in holistics, the all natural kind of thing, because that's the problem with a lot of our first responders, man. You go somewhere and all they want to do is give you a pill, pop a pill, take this, take that. Our organization is not about that. I mean, no, I'd rather stick with the natural side of things to where, especially being a law enforcement, we know we can't be sitting there taking pills and stuff on the job. I mean, that's not good. That's not going to work out. That could come and bite you in the ass later. So that's what Code 1 is. It's a mind, body, spirit. It is mental health. It is nutritional. It is spiritual. We're working on the chaplains program now and the spiritual side of things. But as far as, those will all come together. So once you're getting therapy services, and then you're doing great and you're running at a good speed, let's introduce you to some of the natural stuff, the nutritional stuff. Let's get that nutritional balance going. So we're about making a first responder whole again, not just, well, let's just take care of the mental side and boom, out the door you go. I'm not doing that. I don't even want to be about that. But the long-term goal of where Code 1 Wellness is headed is here in Kansas City. We have a company by the name of ACI Boland. They do a lot of structural development when it comes to hospitals, and when they design really cool, like upcoming stuff, like futuristic stuff is really neat. I went to them and said, hey guys, look, this is what I'm doing. This is what Kansas City needs. Not just Kansas City, but the entire Midwestern region itself, right? Because we don't have anything here in the Midwest. I mean, we got a few inpatient programs, but there's a waiting list. It's not enough. And to be honest with you, I'm not hearing so many great things about it. And of course, every program has its, downfalls, but it is what it is. But not everything works for everybody. Does that make sense? Some
Absolutely
things.
It does.
There you go. So the major goal is to build a 70,000 square foot mental health facility that will be an inpatient and outpatient facility, but it will have an entire nutritional wing. It will have an entire chaplain, a spiritual wing, to where there's a healing garden, to where there's yoga, where there's, the massage therapy, to where whatever it is that you may need, we will provide that. It'll end up having a pool, a gym, but I also want to provide an entire educational wing as well, because, not only are we here to educate our first responders and make them whole again, it's important to educate the families, because when they go home, your significant others, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, whatever, they need to understand how to work with you and how to keep you going on a straight path themselves. So that's another important issue too. And don't forget, I didn't leave the kids out either, because that's another subject within itself. First responders' children deal with secondary trauma.
And it's so important. I think that's because you'd mentioned that there are some other organizations out there, but many times they're not specifically for law enforcement.
Right.
And law enforcement and first responders in general are such a multifaceted job and such a multifaceted career that unless you attack it that way from a varied approach, you're missing the boat. Because if you just solely say, like you said, with the pill dispensing type approach or whatever,
right.
It has to be holistic and what that term actually means.
Absolutely. And with Gabe being and doing the stuff he does, he actually is a former Marine. So he has that background, again, with military. So he gets it. He's been there. He's done it. So he is, man, some of his videos, I have watched them. They're his educational videos. We'll end up having those on our website. There'll be programs coming out. So I'm so excited about that program. That's up and coming. I'm excited about the spiritual side of the program stuff too, because that's something that's kind of been an issue, I think, here in Kansas City, where it may be other places too. I mean, I'd like to hear from some individuals, throughout the United States about this, but you have your chaplains, right? Of course, every department, some of them have chaplains, but the issue at hand here is your chaplain's there for religious purposes. But the issue that we're seeing here is chaplains not having the mental health education to understand how to not only provide the spiritual side, the religious side of things, but understand the mental health side of things too. And I've been really getting some people that are just not providing that mental health education to them at all. They just think, oh, we're going to go in and lean on the spiritual side, the religious side, but you can't do that. You have to understand the mental capacity of an individual and where they're at as well. That's kind of part of it. The same thing we do in CIT as officers. I mean, when you go in and handle a call, especially with an EDP person, it's just kind of like, you're trained in CIT to go in and handle this mental health individual. So why would you not be a trained chaplain in mental health education?
You're absolutely correct about that. And for listeners who aren't in law enforcement, CIT is crisis intervention training. And it's very important. It's kind of elementary and fundamental because most of the agencies, it's usually like a 40-hour course. But it does a great job of dealing with persons in crisis. And it's kind of like a fundamental class that most of us have gone through.
I will say this much, and I'm going to comment on the CIT thing, because once I took that, obviously, like I had said earlier, it was easy for me with my medical background. I'm like, oh, wow, this is great. But the more and more I got out there and I really got into it, my opinion only, and I'm brought this up to some other people, and I've gotten several people to agree with me on this, but I think the CIT kind of, in my opinion, was a little bit done backwards. I think that we should have provided some sort of training, whether it be a day or 2-day training, like a prerequisite kind of thing to take to learn how to deal with as law enforcement officers, our own mental health issues before we go out and we start dealing with our community's mental health, because that's kind of what has been triggering a lot of mental health issues within law enforcement. Is once these guys and girls go through the CIT class, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize maybe I've kind of gotten some of these issues myself, and I'm really dealing with a lot of this stuff, like, whoa, what do I do? And then now we're throwing them out into our communities, dealing with, community mental health, and we're back here in the background struggling with our own issues and not knowing how to take care of it.
Right. I think that's a very, very valid point.
Absolutely, because we're taught how to handle other people's problems. But when it comes to our own issues, it's not there. Look at the relationship issues that we're so many first responders are desperately having problems with. The communication on how to help ourselves is not there, period. And that's what a lot of the mental health education stuff that I really think we've got to get some sort of prerequisite out there to take before you even get involved in CIT. And if you don't, because some of these guys out there are like, man, CIT is so stupid. I don't want to be dealing with other people's mental health stuff. I'm there to take out the threat, and that's what I'm there for, and that's it. I mean, you've got a lot of your good old boys that are just like, that's just the way it is, and that's how it's going to be. Well, times are changing. I hate to tell you that, and you're going to have to roll with the punches because if you don't get with the program and figure out these changes that's going on within our communities, you're going to have some issues and you're going to really struggle because, if you can't learn how to deal with your own issues first, I'm really not sure what in the world you're out there dealing with other people's issues for because, that just isn't going to fit.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to cause problems.
You're so correct. And I mean, that's kind of that whole oxygen mask theory or statement that you hear all the time, with the airlines where you put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on the children or on the adult. And that philosophy or that thinking is so important in the area of mental health or really anything when we're dealing with other people.
Right. Absolutely.
So I love to hear that. And I also like to hear the fact that you guys are doing so much on the nutritional side because you are so correct that what we do, it's horrible for diet. Like you mentioned, the 12-hour shifts. I also work the 12-hour shifts here and I'm also on night shifts. So when it comes to diet and exercise, that shift can be horrible. And then if it's a crazy night or whatever's going on, then diet becomes an issue and everything else.
Right. Correct. I know. And some people, when we could sit here for hours and talk about nutritional, about, I started this new diet or I'm going to the gym and I'm working out and I'm doing all this. Well, you do it for a while and then you slack off because it's just, you have to learn how to train your mind. We do it in the academy. You did it when you were there, but then after a while, when you're out here working, you're like, man, it's so hard to keep up. But there's a lot of tools Gabe's going to have and teach people that I'm very confident in when he comes out with his stuff that really is going to help other people finally learn how to train your mind on being more disciplined. He teaches you how more to stay disciplined in what you're doing to where you don't fall off that track. You start something, you're like, oh, it lasted, whatever. That was, and you're right back doing the same thing you were 2 months ago. So I'm excited to see what he comes out with.
That's great. Let me ask you, do you believe in a work-life balance and what role does it have in mental health?
I personally cannot say I believe in that because I don't have one.
Fair enough.
I don't have one right now because of what I'm trying to develop and what I do. I now work. It's like I said, it's taken me a while. I now work a job Monday through Friday. I'm actually an office manager. I run about 17 different companies. So with that being said, in the midst of doing all of that, I would say once every 10, 15 minutes, I'm checking emails or figuring stuff out with Code One or whatever, because I have that flexibility and I can do that. But when I come home after a long day, well, like this evening, I'm talking with you. It's a nonstop thing. I don't have a life. I really don't. I walk my dogs occasionally when it's not cold. That's something fun I do. But my work is my life. It is. It basically is. Same thing with law enforcement. When I was full time, you're working them 12s, 2 on, 2 off every other weekend. It's like you're spending your days off trying to catch up on your sleep, laundry, clean the house, run your errands, and then what? Netflix and chill for a while. You know what I mean?
You're right.
That's what you get. That's all there is to it. I mean, and it's just, again, you eat, sleep, breathe, and you worry about, man, when I'm on that next shift, getting that guy I was out, I'm going to go sit on this house because I'm going to get this guy. It's just like you constantly think about it 24/7. And it's just, so yeah, I don't really I don't believe in the work-life balance. There's not. It's work 24/7.
And I agree with you. I think I look at it more as seasons of life, because you have things that you're focusing on in different seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that, seasons. Yeah, as a matter of fact, my buddy Tim, he told me there's seasons with everything you do. Sometimes, even especially with people come and go. There's a season for everything and everybody.
Yes. And I know working the 12-hour shifts that again, it's just speaking anecdotally for myself, but when you come off of that 2-day, or especially the 3-day, you spend most of that first day off decompressing from having worked, and then you spend the next day getting ready to go back, and it's more of a preparation day. So you spend a day decompressing and a day preparing, and there's obviously some other hours in there. I mean, it's not like you spend the whole day, but it is a mental thing where mentally I'm kind of decompressing from having just worked 3 12-hour shifts.
Exactly. And it's funny. I'm going to take a second here and tell you this really quick, but I got off a shift a couple of weeks ago, and I work PMs every other Sunday, and I was actually getting off. I think it was, I got off work about 10:30, so I was Central Standard Time here. So I think I was driving home around 10:30, and I just got off shift. And of course, it was Sunday evening. Not a whole lot of people were out or whatever, but I was coming down the back road to the house, and I stopped at a stoplight. Of course, there's no cars out or whatever, and I'm thinking to myself, man, like that was a busy shift, like I had, of course, now being busy to me is like, 3 or 4 calls. I'm like, geez, because being part-time now, I don't do that all the time. So I thought I was busy.
Oh, how it changes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That and equipment issues in the body. Ooh, it hurts even worse. But anyhow, no, I was sitting in my car. I was stopped at the stoplight, and I thought to myself, wow, I really had a busy shift, and nothing really, I don't think anything really bothered me. It's just the fact that I'm going to go home, and, my dogs are going to, obviously they were sleeping, and I'm going to come in, and I had to come down off. I was still in cop mode. And what I mean by cop mode is, my heightened awareness was going, my constant adrenaline, I guess, not so much, high, but it was just, I was constantly on go, 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 go mode. And when I came in, I brought all my equipment in, I took my vest and everything off, and I'm sitting there, and of course I'm watching the news, which some people say don't watch the damn news, but how can you not? So I was watching the news, and I'll tell you, I was playing on my phone, and I'm just doing all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm so tired, but I found it really difficult to shut my mind off, just to go to sleep. And I thought there for a moment, I'm like, I'm going to take this as a learning or teaching moment for myself. And I'm going to think, what can I do to sit here and help myself turn my mind off? Like, what can I do? Because right here, this is the issue with a lot of first responders. They come home and they want to drink. I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to take a shot of whiskey, or I'm going to sip on this bourbon, or whatever they want to do. I'm going to just take the edge off, so that way it'll help me relax, or I'm going to pop this pain pill or help me relax, or whatever the case may be. And I thought, how can I sit here and turn this off? I'm so tired. I just want to go to sleep. I don't want to think about anything I just did. Right. I just took some deep breaths. I shut the damn TV off because, well, that wasn't helping. And I took my phone, and I finally put my phone down, because that seems to be a huge thing, especially with law enforcement. Come on, you guys out there listening, you do it. You sit in your patrol car and you play on your damn phone, and you're cruising through Facebook or Snapchat or whatever you're doing. But we do it. Oh, yeah. Because waiting on that next call, you're sitting there playing on your phone. And so I sat my phone down, and I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and listen to the quiet for a second, and just listen to myself take in some deep breaths, and just try to focus on something that made me happy, or a positive thought of, I'm really excited that tomorrow is my day off, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to go treat myself and get an ice cream, whatever, something super positive that I was looking forward to. It took me, I'd say, a good 15, almost 20 minutes sitting there in just silence and quiet, just to collect my thoughts, just to really figure out, okay, this day is over, that shift is over, those calls are done, my reports, everything's done. I can finally just sit here and do nothing for a minute. So then when I finally realized and felt myself coming down from that shift and everything that I did, at that point I was actually able just to lay down and close my eyes and thought, okay, this is good. I think I can go to sleep. Sure enough, man, I was out. So it's just the process. And then I thought to myself, like I said, I'm single, so I don't, of course I got my dog in the bed with me, but, when other guys are married and they come home, their wives are sleeping or whatever, and of course they get in bed and they're just laying there, whatever they do, or they sit downstairs and play on the computer or play video games, whatever you do. You really need to take a moment and just seriously, in my advice, just sit there and quiet. Just sit there and be quiet. Don't play on your phone. Don't do anything. Stare at the damn wall and just focus on thinking about something positive, and just taking some deep breaths and trying to bring that energy level that you've been on for the past 12 hours, try to bring it down.
Yeah.
If you're pissed off and angry about something or whatever, man, it can wait until tomorrow. It can wait. A lot of people ask me, are you doing what you preach and what you are doing? Yes, I do. I'm trying to do all this stuff myself, because why would I be helping others if I don't, Yeah. So.
Well, some form of meditation or moment of just clear the mind is so important. I realize that because I have the same problem with shutting my mind down, and then it's always been that way. And then I noticed that even being at the agency that I'm at, the path when you go into CID, if you won't get promoted, you then go back to the road. So going back to the road again, I realized how many things are going on at one time that we manage, be it phones and radios and computers and your guys calling you and all the different things that are going on.
Absolutely.
In your mind, going from that space to getting home and then just trying to lay down, go to bed, there's got to be something in there that starts shutting the mind down and allows you to, like you said, concentrate on the moment as opposed to all that craziness. Right.
And I'm not an expert at meditation by any means. That's kind of something. And I was talking to Gabe, the nutritional director. I was talking to him about this too. And he goes, man, I'll tell you what, he goes, if you've never meditated before, it is something that you have to learn how to do. It's a mindset. You've got to get into it. So for guys just listening to this, guys, girls, whatever, just listening to this podcast, if you've never meditated, and of course people are like, oh, do you just go home and meditate? Man, I get it. It's not that easy. I can't just sit there and close my eyes and focus because, well, first of all, I have an issue sitting there closing my eyes anyway, because, like if I close my eyes, I'm going to keep one eye open and I'm going to watch the door. Okay. Yep. Let's just be real. So if you just want to sit in the living room or something, or, even before you go in the house, no, let's just not say that, because then you're going to sit in the car in your uniform and then you probably stink and you don't want to do any of that. But, when you go in the house and you get everything off and you find a comfortable spot, if you're in the living room or I don't know, go sit in the bathroom on the toilet or something, just a quiet place, something. Even in the shower, if you take a shower, I hope you do before you go to bed or something. If you do that, just, slow your mind down, take some deep breaths, just think about something positive. And bring that level that you're at, like you just said, that level of go, 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 go. Try to bring it down, man. Just, like I said, deep breaths. You don't have to sit there and close your eyes and meditate, but just try to think of something that makes you happy. What comes to your head and makes you happy, And then you kind of start thinking of, I don't know, wonderful things like flowers and cotton candy or something, just whatever. But
yeah, whatever it is for the person, but it's so important.
Yeah, it's simple. It's simple, I think.
I've used some of those meditation apps in the past, just looking at them, because it's part of what I'm, trying to do is helping the whole person. So, and one of them that I'd used was called Headspace. And it's funny what you pointed out, because the first time, like 30 seconds is probably the longest I could go, just without thinking about something else, because it's just not natural for us in our line of work.
I keep saying this, but I'm a very honest individual. So even when I come home, I'm sitting there like, man, did I forget to put that in my report? Did I forget that? Did I get that witness statement? Did I do, is that what happened? Did I forget something? Because we know how it is, especially when you're, even if you're involved in a shooting or something and you have to go through debriefings. I can't talk on that subject because I've never been in a shooting. I've worked the after part of it, but I've not physically actually been in one myself. So I can't relate to that. I've talked to guys, several of them who have, but yeah, I don't know. That is very tough. That is very tough. So.
Well, in those incidents, whether you're returning fire or a situation where you're being shot at, can say that those type things it becomes even harder to quiet the mind for months afterwards. Because you go through all the different scenarios of what took place that night. And regardless of your role, because if you have more of a supervisory role or whatever, your role is, you go through, well, did we do things right? Did we do the things we should have done? Have we done this? Yep. And yeah, I think it's very much like you were talking about earlier of the different stages that you go through in any type of major incident.
Okay, so on this subject really quick that you're getting into, and I think this is where, a lot of people are across the United States are like, oh, we're getting these peer support programs, right? So when an incident like this happens, okay, you have your quote unquote peer support programs. Well, again, not everything works for everybody, okay? But is it a resource? Is it a tool? Absolutely. The biggest thing I'm getting, and I'm going to tell you again, this is my opinion coming from me. I personally, if I needed a peer support individual, I have that close buddy, Tim of mine, that I talk with. Am I going to go to a superior or someone in my department that's in peer support and tell them that I'm having some severe, thoughts, or, my relationship isn't working out quite and I'm having all these issues, whatever the case may be? No, probably not, because I'm not going to talk about my personal life, and I'm definitely not going to be telling my department that I've got a lot of mental health issues, right? Not going to happen. So I think it's a tool to have there. If whoever chooses to use it, go for it. It's your prerogative. There's a lot of pros, and I think there's a lot of cons to that. That's why, again, I developed Code One, because we're an outside entity. I am not affiliated with any police department or anything like that. I've had police departments and some chiefs ask me, hey, we'd like to be a part of this. But then on the backside of it, they're like, okay, well, we need to know about Officer Smith. Yeah, that ain't going to happen. So a lot of people are either going to love me or they're going to hate me. And you pick whichever one or line you want to stand in. I could care less. But, I'm doing this as an outside entity because I myself, for one, wanted a place to go outside of my damn department to begin with, because I didn't want anybody to know about what was going on with me or whatever the case may be or whatever happened. I didn't want anybody to know. And I still to this day, I wouldn't want anybody to know. I would go somewhere and handle my own business on my own, because, that's the whole, we're supposed to be tough and not show any emotion or whatever. So when, you got an Officer Smith and his wife is having issues, and he doesn't want anybody at the department to know that his wife is either, depressed or manic depressant, or if she's experiencing, psychotic stuff or whatever the case may be. I mean, look at the postpartum the women go through when it comes to depression or whatever. I mean, a lot of your young officers, when they get married and they have babies and new families, who knows? The wife could have a lot of issues, and he doesn't want anybody at the department to know, because, his wife could really be needing help. And if that's the case, that's where we come in at. That's what Code One is for. That's why, again, it's an outside entity. So I think the departments today out there, I think they just need to stick with policing. They need to stick with just being cops. And I think when it comes to the mental health side of things, I think they need to let an outside entity like what we're developing take that part from them. So I think the liability, it's kind of like, let us take the liability. Let us take that part that your department doesn't need to worry about, because I think a lot of departments are bringing on all these programs and so much stuff that it's like, maybe you should just focus on policing your communities and your policies, and let us outside entities that are trained to handle your officers, let us handle that portion of it.
To that end, one thing that agencies in this area are doing, which is they're not using a third party, but what they have done to kind of help with this issue is like the CISM team here, the Critical Incident Stress Management Team. They will, if an incident happens in one county or in one city, the team is actually composed regionally. So the people that are with that agency are not going to be the ones that they respond. It's going to be one of the other agencies from that region that goes to that agency. That way you are not dealing with people that they know. It's going to be people they don't know that they can reach out to or talk to in a peer-to-peer type. But I love the idea, or I like the idea of what you're talking about with a third-party organization.
nobody wants to go talk to a therapist that is hired by their own department. I mean, let's really be honest here. There's a lot of issues with that. A lot of questions, a lot of concerns, a lot of liability, I think, involved in that. It would scare me as an officer if I was, that would scare me. So with that being said, I've tried to explain, and especially departments all across, the Midwest, or really anywhere, Code 1 Wellness would love to have the, support and of all these different police departments and everything, because it's like, why would you not support a third party outside entity to handle all that stuff for you? So it's kind of like your liability of, and when I say liability, I mean, when you have a detective that's out there working and hasn't had sleep for 24 to 48 hours, and they're out there working cases, right? Well, now all of a sudden, when you have him driving in the car, he's a liability because he's not had any sleep, okay? There's so many different liability aspects that as a department that you have to worry about, that, you're thinking the mental health of an individual. I mean, especially when are they mentally capable of handling, calls in the community when it comes to shootings? I mean, all kinds of stuff. So instead of worrying about the training aspect of it and the mental health aspect of it, of whether or not your officers are getting trained or have that option of, seeking that help, whatever, the home issues, that's another thing a lot of departments deal with. Officer so-and-so is dealing with home issues, and that's why he's having, issues when he's going on calls, and he's, all of a sudden he snaps on a call to some lady that's crying about, the neighbor's dog shit in her yard, and then all of a sudden Officer so-and-so snaps because he's so tired of dealing with, shortage of officers. That's another thing that we're experiencing as officers, being out in law enforcement. The shortage of officers. When you're running, like here in Kansas City, they have a huge shortage. When you're running call to call to call to call, dude, you're on burnout.
Yep.
When you're on burnout, you're on lack of sleep. Now you're not eating right. Now your mental health becomes an issue, because are you making the proper decisions? I mean, how many hours did you just work? You worked a 10 hours, because they work 10s, I think KCPD works 10s here in Kansas City. So if you work a 10-hour shift and then you turn around and you go to sleep, and then or either that or you get you buy back or something and you get held over. I know when I worked for the city of Kansas City, I was an airport police officer. If they didn't show up for that shift, I got stuck. If I was on the list, I got stuck to stay. I was working over 16 hours. Yeah. I thought to myself, man, if I hit that 15-hour and all of a sudden I get involved in a shooting, where was my mental state, of being? That's a huge liability. I was tired. I hadn't had enough sleep. I mean, my thought process, that comes into play too. So you have to look at all these aspects of it. And so with that being said, I think that having an outside entity handle all of that stuff for them and not worry about it, man, that should be, not only that, that's an incentive, that's an incentive when you're trying to get all these, we need more officers. How do we bring them into our department? Nobody wants to be a cop anymore. Well, I'll tell you why nobody wants to be a cop anymore, because nobody wants to put up with the shit of what's going on out there on the streets, because they can't handle it. They can't deal with it. They don't even know how to process what's going on, I don't know how to process being on a damn scene and this chick down the street's like videotaping me or yelling in my face or spitting at me, or, I hate the police, or whatever the case may be. The young ones don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to process it. They don't know how to deal with what is going on in today's society, because it's just, of course, you're young millennials and just think, everything's owed to them and nothing is owed to you. So again, it simply comes down to the fact of, we're an outside entity. That's the whole point of what I'm doing. Let us handle the situation. That way it's taking that stress off the departments. You don't have to worry about any of it. Let us even do the training portion of it, Send your guys to us. Just like, you send them to the academy, you hired them at the department, you're going to send them to the academy to get trained. Same damn thing. Yeah. If you got an issue with one of your guys, send them to us. That's what we're here for.
Well, and more agencies are using third-party services. I had interviewed Rich Milliman with Extra Duty Solutions, and that's what they do, is they pretty much take over the department's extra duty program. So what you're suggesting really is no different. It's just using the professionals in that space, in this case mental health, and using them to handle this for the department. Because like you said, this may not be their strong point or what they're necessarily suited for. Let me ask you, I kind of prepped you at the beginning for this, but kind of like as a final question that I ask everybody, what do you think is the most important thing that agencies can do to help law enforcement officers in their personal lives?
I think the most important thing right now, to be honest with you, is to give them the proper resources to handle that themselves. I don't think an officer's personal life, because it will, whether you think it does now or not, it will come back and it will bite you in the ass. Because if something happens or your attitude changes or whatever the case may be, believe me, it will come back up. If you are sitting there talking about what goes on in your personal life, don't do that. I think these departments need to give the proper resources to first responders to handle that stuff themselves on the outside. That's just my opinion on that.
So let me just ask, how can people connect with you and the great work that you're doing?
Okay, well, like I said, we have the website. You can always go there, which is the www.code-1-wellness.com. You can actually go on there. There's donation. They're signing up for online services. There is a phone number Monday through Friday you can contact us at. And as a matter of fact, my email address is on there. So if you want to know how you can help, if you want to know about getting any sort of, we have these little cards. And if any law enforcement agencies want little cards to carry on them, maybe to pass out to anybody, we have those. I can send them to you via mail. So if you shoot me an email and want some information, I can send it out to you. What else? If you're in the Kansas City area, I'll tell you this, if you're listening, we have a huge fundraising event here in Kansas City come May 30th. That's actually Worth Harley-Davidson up here by the Kansas City International Airport is going to allow us to have their facilities, which will have 3 major headliner bands. Matter of fact, Cassie Joy from The Voice will be there. We are going to end up having Jim and the Outlaws, which is a local band here in Kansas City, and then also Noe Palma, who is with Kansas City Fire Department, who has a band too. So yeah, we got a huge charity ride, a lot of bikers coming in and out of town for that. And then, yeah, so looking forward to that event. And if you want to know anything more about that or any more information, again, like I said, everything's on the website. So you can check it out.
Perfect. Well, I'll be sure to link all that up in the show notes. I just want to say, Vanessa, Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you. This has been fun.
So thank you so much for listening. This is such an important topic. The subject of mental health, as you know, we're seeing things, it seems like daily anymore in the news and on social media of officers needing help or, the tragic consequences that can come from not getting help when we talk about mental health. So please take it to heart. Take a few minutes. Check out the website for Code 1 Wellness. The links are in the show notes. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, we also do the Monday morning roll call. Comes out every Monday. And it's 10 minutes to start your week, where it's a monologue format where I just go over something that will hopefully give you something actionable for that week. Other than that, I hope you'll take a minute, check out the website ontheblueline.com. Again, ontheblueline.com. And I hope you have a wonderful week. We will see you next Monday at Roll Call. And in the meantime, I'll see you out there on the Blue Line.